Hey everybody, hello again. Hi, you and everybody out there. Welcome back. This is Thumb on the Pulse. If you're new here and you haven't been here before, Thumb on the Pulse is a live weekly news show that we do here on my channel, thumbspazm here on Twitch, where we record it live while you guys hang out and kind of interact with me while I do the news. So if you're new or if you've been here before, thank you again for being here. It means the world to me. Just by hanging out and showing up, you're supporting the channel and allowing me to do something that I love and continue to do it. And if you're checking this out on YouTube, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, show us a little bit of love, and spread the word if you get a chance to. And if you like what you see today, maybe click that alert button to get alerts on when we post new videos on the channel. But other than that, like I said before, this is Thumb on the Pulse, where we like to talk about gaming news, industry news, and streamer news, stuff like that that gets our hearts racing. So please hang out, sit back. Hopefully I can bring you a little information that you maybe didn't know before. Let's go. All right, guys, like I had said before, welcome back. We're just going to dive right into the news. We've got lots to talk about today. It doesn't seem like a lot because a lot of the stories are intertwined a little bit, but we're going to be talking about a lot of company news and industry news, everything from Google to Microsoft to Epic to Steam to Valve to lawsuits to new games coming out, and of course, the ever popular free games section. So hang out with us and let's jump right into the first story, shall we? As I'd mentioned before, we're going to be talking a little bit about Google and in particular Google Stadia. Google Stadia Internal Studios was a studio or development company that was intended to be Google's answer to Epic Games Store and the Steam Store in light of creating their own titles and maybe coming out with actual unique franchises, housing other titles to host and put onto Android and Google devices, things of that nature. Well, as an experimental business venture that Google took this on as, they have officially announced that they've been closed. Stadia Vice President and Product Head John Justice has officially left Google entirely following the closure of Stadia's internal studios. Also, with reports of the departure of Jade Raymond, another head of Stadia Games, earlier this year, the closure infamously followed Phil Harrison telling Stadia employees that progress was going great, and then 5 days later, everybody was getting laid off. That's when everything started. Harrison later wrote in an official blog post that Stadia would be moving forward from a storefront subscription service and more towards a technology base that Google can license out to publishers and other developers. So we'll see how that goes. Speaking of storefronts and different companies that are taking that whole game on, Epic Games has been in the news almost every single week with us, continuing to make big moves in the storefront, selling games, business ventures. Epic has bought a new indie game resource. This resource is called Artstation. Artstation is a website that hosts artist portfolios that has a focus on digital and video game art specifically, helping artists display their portfolios to potential companies and employers. It's used by a large number of video game and film artists, from amateurs to those who are already at the top of their field. Recently featured artists from the Artstation platform that have been utilized have worked on games like Cyberpunk and other Blizzard and Disney titles. The site also runs a marketplace for game assets and digital illustration resources, and as the first order of business, Epic has already made executive decisions to make the platform a little bit better. They've dropped Artstation's standard marketplace fee to utilize their resources from 30% to 12%, a drastic drop of over half, matching what Epic Game charges store revenue cuts from the store itself. This acquisition is in line with Epic's current strategy of focusing on services and tools that encourage and promote the creation and distribution of games. For instance, it recently acquired and released the free MetaHuman Creator, which is allowing game developers to customize and export absolutely phenomenally realistic human models that are already available to animate and use in Unreal Engine products. The Unreal Engine itself is already available to use at no cost, and commercial Unreal Engine games don't pay any royalties until they make over $1 million in revenue. All of these things put Epic above and beyond in regards to other gaming stores. To keep going with the news of Epic and their acquisitions and the moves that they're making, we're going to talk a little bit about the company itself and the game store in particular. And I'm going to throw out a bunch of numbers here, which may or may not be boring to some people, but for me, I find it insanely interesting, especially the amounts of money that Epic's throwing around. To start things off, Epic Games had an exclusivity deal with Borderlands 3 when it first came out that cost Epic Games $115 million. Now, what this exclusivity deal was, essentially, if we just break it down to its bare bones, Epic Games Store got exclusive access to sell Borderlands 3 when it was first released for one solid year. For the first year Borderlands 3 was out, the only place you could buy it was on the Epic Games Store. This cost Epic $115 million. What this $115 million breaks down to ultimately is roughly $15 million in marketing budget, $20 million in non-recoupable fees, and then $80 million is basically a minimum profit guarantee. Well, in 2 weeks, in the first 2 weeks that Epic Games Store had Borderlands 3, the game sold well enough to reach that guarantee within those 2 weeks, with a recoupable revenue of $100 million in that period. The document that has been publicly released at this point also shows that Epic paid $11 million for its free giveaway of the Handsome Collection within the Borderlands, a bundle containing Borderlands 2, the pre-sequel, and most of the DLC for it. As of September 2019, Epic Games had signed up 105 exclusive titles for the Epic Games Store, amounting to just over $1 billion spent securing those titles. The exclusives aren't stopping there. According to Epic's quote-unquote aggressive pursuit model, this is a model that they're following as long as, business keeps going well. It's going to aim for 52 more exclusive titles in 2021, another 36 in 2022, capping 34 more in 2023, as well as 2024. Given the fact that Epic has told everybody earlier this year that they're doubling down on exclusive launches, this leads us all to believe that things are going quite well and they will be following that model from here on out. A lot of this information also comes from lawsuits through Epic and Apple and all these lawsuits that are going down with those companies. This is a big reason why we're getting a lot of the information, revenue information, dollar points, and price points on a lot of this stuff, is because a lot of stuff is mandatory in the lawsuits that are going on between some of these companies. Another fun fact that we threw out there, and just random fact here, but another fun fact we did find out with these lawsuit documents coming to air, Fortnite, over the last 2 years alone, the game Fortnite for Epic has raked in $9.1 billion in 2 years. Insane how much money that game makes. Speaking of lawsuits, Steam, I feel like we don't ever get to talk about Steam unless we talk about lawsuits. Overgrowth developer Wolfire Games files an antitrust lawsuit against Valve. They have filed this antitrust lawsuit against Valve, alleging that it uses its dominance over PC gaming market through Steam to suppress competition while extracts an extraordinarily high cut from nearly every sale that passes through its store. Not uncommon to some of the other lawsuits we've seen against Valve and Steam, but this lawsuit claims that Steam's domination of the market can be seen in the fact that no other storefront, including those operated by deep-pocketed heavy hitters in this suit's argument like Electronic Arts and Microsoft, have been able to meaningfully make headway against Steam. Origin, the Microsoft Store, Ubisoft, GOG, they've all survived but hold relatively tiny slices of the market. EA and Microsoft have brought their games back to Steam after attempting to go solo, which, in my opinion, I don't think is going to last very long because of the partnership with Electronic Arts and Microsoft. But this is all information from this lawsuit. One more paragraph from the suit that I'm going to mention. The defense states that even the Epic Games Store is cited in the lawsuit as a failure against Steam because while it's currently Valve's chief competitor in the digital PC marketplace, it has only been able to do so by spending hundreds of millions of dollars, like we were just talking about, on exclusive deals with publishers and games. And even after that, it holds relatively a tiny portion of this digital PC market, roughly 15% as of June 2020. Now, keeping in mind, since June 2020, like we've been reporting on Thumb on the Pulse, Epic's made tremendous steps without spending a whole lot of money. In fact, I was just reading an article that I wish I had the graphic for, and maybe I'll find it in post, that shows a graph that with each free game Epic gives away, it's not actually spending that much money. The money they invest comes back very, very easily and very well for them. So for this lawsuit to say that Epic's failing to compete, we wanted to note that Steam has been a digital PC marketplace since 2003. That's roughly 17-ish years, depending on when you're watching this video and how late in the year, whatever. Epic Games has only had 3 years of competitive action against Steam, and they're already holding 15% of the marketplace. So whether this is actually a monopoly, or in this lawsuit's words, a valid argument towards an antitrust lawsuit? I'm not 100% sure. I just think companies like GOG, like Ubisoft, like Microsoft, like the ones we listed in the article, I just don't think they've had enough time yet or have good enough business practices to actually compete with Valve and with Steam. Epic seeming to do a great job with unique tactics, investing in independent and small game developers and trying to get exclusive deals with games, as well as giving away free games. They're doing great to compete. I just think if we give it a little bit more time, and I think the courts are going to kind of read in my favor and in my same mind frame with this as well. But I think they just haven't had enough time to truly compete with Valve, where Valve had kind of a leg up on everybody. Microsoft, EA, and Ubisoft are all in cahoots together right now. I predict that will become an online digital marketplace. Those three stores will combine. Epic is making deals left and right. Not to mention, another side note, going back on the fact that I had mentioned Epic is investing in a lot of independent developers, they have just made itch.io, one of the main sources to find and try new independently developed games, is now available on the Epic Store. Only 6% of developers say game stores are justified in taking a 30% cut. Again, Epic Store was the first one to drop that 30% cut to 12%, whereas now there are other stores that are doing that as well. Moving us into our next article. Microsoft is making a huge move to try to match Epic in regards to being a competitive digital marketplace. Kind of spilling out from that lawsuit against Steam. Please, if you guys could mention in the comments down below, do you think Steam is becoming a monopoly? Do you think they're just playing a good game and being competitive, and now all of these other companies are having an opportunity to compete as well? What are your thoughts? Please leave those in the comments down below. Microsoft is still fighting, is still pushing the good fight to become a valuable and decent digital marketplace in today's gaming industry. They are taking heed from Epic and dropping that developer's cut from their 30%, which was the industry standard, down to the 12%. The reduction comes into effect as of August 1st, and that will mean that Microsoft takes the same cut of revenue as Epic Games, something which it's been using since the launch of the Epic Game Store to try to entice developers. Valve still takes, like we were talking about before, the 30% cut. Valve doesn't have anything that's even close to this cut for their developers. They start at 30%. If that game that Steam signs up with makes $10 million, they drop that to a 25% cut. If it makes $50 million, then they drop that to a 20% cut. But they never go as low as 15%, let alone the 12%. We're going to have a lot more information coming out on all of these stories in the future. So please, if any of this stuff intrigues you like it does me, keep your ears and your eyes on Thumb and the Pulse. Make sure you're tuning in because we're going to have so much more information on this stuff coming in the future. One last thing in regards to developers and news on that. As we're all familiar, this whole situation that's been going on since March of last year, the whole pandemic game has really put a hindrance on life. That's just going without saying, right? A poll recently stated that 44% of game developers say that the pandemic has caused significant delays in games. In the 2020 edition of the Game Developers Conference annual survey, 33% of developers that were surveyed said that they'd experienced a game delay due to the early months of the pandemic and the shift from working from home. The hits kept coming throughout the year, affecting huge games like Halo Infinite, Far Cry 6, even the rigorously on-time Final Fantasy XIV had to push back an update for their game this year. So it's not too surprising that this year's GDC survey of more than 3,000 game developers showed that nearly half have now experienced a pandemic delay. In 2021, which I know we're not too far into it, but this year so far, 44% of respondents said that their game has been delayed due to the pandemic, citing a variety of reasons within pandemic relation. Some developers mentioned the complications of dealing with balancing their work life and the kids' life and the family life, all while in the same location at home. Others mentioned working remotely has made it harder to collaborate with their colleagues. The pandemic basically disrupted our communications and all of our work rhythm was the underlying tone from most of these responses. Some others cited the technical challenges from working from home, stating that it was hard to adapt to development testing and development from home when you need good internet connections, solid server connections, and development kits that work only via VPNs due to the first-party partners not accounting for easy ways to facilitate this from working from home. A lot of these developers are already used to 12 to 18-hour days, grinding and staring at a screen, coding all the while, and then getting a break from that monotony, shutting off the computer, closing down their workstation, and heading home, getting to relax with their family. Well, since that is all the same thing now, a lot of developers are claiming a Groundhog Day type feeling. So we'll see, hopefully, with restrictions easing up and people getting vaccinated, that we'll not only see a little bit less stressed development teams, but also a lot more games coming out on time with anticipated timelines. Going back to a topic we tend to talk a lot about, lawsuits. After 9 years, Activision and Blizzard have won a lawsuit over the patent, or rather, idea of a patent over 3D multiplayer games. How vague is that, right? There's a company out there called Worlds Incorporated, and in 2012, they sued Activision and Blizzard over patents relating to avatars and 3D multiplayer environments. Activision/Blizzard have won officially this 9-year lawsuit brought against them from Worlds Incorporated. The self-described, quote, leading intellectual property developer and licensee of patents related to 3D online virtual worlds, end quote, originally sued Activision and Blizzard back in 2012 for allegedly infringing on 5 different patents that they supposedly owned. These patents, according to Worlds Incorporated, covered a system of method for enabling users to interact in a virtual space, essentially claiming in their lawsuit that they had invented avatars, that they had invented 3D multiplayer, and they had invented the ability to interact with other players in a 3-dimensional space. Worlds Incorporated specifically cited games like World of Warcraft and Call of Duty as main culprits within Activision and Blizzard, and requested that they cease the infringement, meaning that Worlds Incorporated requested of this lawsuit that the company shut down the games because of their continual infringement on their patents. Now, like we said, this lawsuit has finished up. The courts did eventually side with Activision and Blizzard last month, stating that World Incorporated's patents were abstract ideas, and the generic steps listed in their patents don't exactly provide the inventive concept to convert the abstract ideas into patent-eligible processes. Activision and Blizzard has recently been sued over Modern Warfare character Mara, as well as a lawsuit from a web game called Warzone. 2 more lawsuits they have to wait on and finish. More lawsuits that we get a report on in the future. News that we promised we'd bring you an update on a couple weeks ago. Maybe it was last week, I can't remember. But Discord. As you guys remember, we reported on the fact that Microsoft had put in a bid to purchase the company that is Discord. Well, a decision has been made. Discord officially turned down the offer to be purchased by Microsoft for well over, I think, $10 million. As it stood, Microsoft and Epic Games were among many companies that were interested in a possible buyout. Microsoft and Epic Games were among many companies that had a possibility of buying out Discord before the company themselves reportedly halted all buyout processes and talks in order to focus more on considering taking the company public. Quoted from the company stating, "Our goal is to bring the Discord and PlayStation experiences closer together on console and mobile starting early next year, allowing friends, groups, and communities to hang out, have fun, and communicate more easily while playing games together." That was from Ryan, a representative from Sony. It's also worth noting that the integration with the PlayStation Network won't likely affect the current PC Discord experience. Xbox also has had a small integration with Discord for a little while now. Users are able to link their Xbox and Discord accounts in order to share friends lists across the platforms. So we'll see how this progresses in the future. My favorite part, as always, we love talking about free games. You guys, we have a lot of free games coming out this month, so keep an eye on your subscription services. The first Xbox Game Pass for May will come on Tuesday, May 4th, which was a little while ago, in the form of Dragon Quest Builders 2, and will be followed by FIFA 21 for Game Pass Ultimate members, thanks to the EA Play partnership. Also, Outlast 2 and Steep on May 6th. The next batch of Xbox Game Pass games that will be available to Xbox Game Pass subscribers will come on May 13th in the form of Final Fantasy X and X-2, the HD remastered versions. Super excited to play Final Fantasy X again. Just Cause 4 Reloaded will be involved, Psychonauts 1, and Red Dead Online. Also on May 13th, the Epic Store, as usual, bringing us more free games, will bring us the title Pine. So check out those games. So many great games in the titles that I mentioned. And as we mentioned last week, there are games available in the Sony Store as well. I think we talked about Battlefield 5, Wreckfest, Stranded Deep, a lot of free games with Sony as well. And last, but certainly not least, we've got new game news. Let's go ahead and see what kind of new games are coming out. Insanely new, so new that we don't even really have a title for it yet. IOI, or IO Interactive, the same company that's behind the Hitman series, is reportedly working on a new fantasy IP for Xbox, according to reports from Windows Central. The outlet was told of a brand new IP named, or codenamed rather, Project Dragon, that had come up in talks between IO and Microsoft. Those reports were corroborated by Eurogamer, whose sources explained that the project is going to be a AAA game in scope, though it's still super early in the development. The game, Project Dragon, is reportedly a connected world sort of RPG game with various job listings, being posted on search and multiplayer network programmer sites. One listing was spotted by Windows Central even lists the name of the team that's going to be put together as Dragon. Eurogamer sources elaborated, saying that the game would take place in a medieval-esque world featuring, you guessed it by the name of the game, dragons. Super excited to hear a medieval RPG game, open world game coming out soon. Theoretically, it'll probably be a couple years before we get the game, but hopefully we'll start hearing more information from IOI or Microsoft or both of them as to what this game might be. MechWarrior 5, a new smashing mech simulator game. Originally launching on Epic back in December 2019, MechWarrior 5 was set to hit other platforms after a year-long exclusivity period that was supposed to end December of 2020. Well, with the looming threat of Cyberpunk 2077's release last year, the stompy-footed robot sim was pushed back into later this year. Piranha Games is ready to bring MechWarrior 5 to Steam now and GOG as of May 27th. This month's launch of the game will be a full cross-play launch between Epic, Steam, GOG, and Xbox versions. The game also includes Heroes of the Inner Sphere DLC campaign, which will only require one player to own it in order to play cooperatively with other players, which is an awesome, awesome feature. An update also includes a bunch of new features, including squishy infantry units, a revamped UI, extreme weather conditions, and a brand new campaign introduction. If you're big into mech games, check this one out. It's supposed to be awesome. In the vein of open world games that are coming out newly released, stealing houses, fancy cars, robbing banks, and robbing restaurants. Does this sound interesting to you? This isn't a new Grand Theft Auto game. This is a sequel to a previously released game called Thief Simulator. We're talking about Thief Simulator 2. Now, Thief Simulator 2 is due out next year on PC, with a console release to follow in 2023. However, it's not being made by the original studio that made the first Thief Simulator game. The original studio, Noble Muffins, is in development of a brand new title because Mr. Kiatsugu, I think is the name of the new development company that has taken over development on Thief Simulator 2. Noble Muffins, the original development team, is actually working on a very similar type game called American Theft 80s, which looks basically like Thief Sim, but in the 80s, as if it was recorded on a VHS or something like that. Basically, you'll be pilfering VHS players and CRTs in that one. American Theft 80s is scheduled to release later this year. The last new game on our new games list, and sadly the last story of the day, Distant Kingdoms. Now, this game looks incredibly intriguing. It's a new early release game right now. It's an early access, and after 3 years under development, a team of 9 people got together in Orthra Studios, which is a studio that was founded in 2017. They've released a couple other games before Distant Kingdoms. They're trying to make a AA game out of Distant Kingdoms, a unique blend of city building, social management, exploration, and adventure gameplay. Distant Kingdoms brings a rich fantasy world to life. Help the humans, help the dwarves and the elves, as well as the orcs of Talim begin a new life and a new society in the fabled land of Inaron. This game looks absolutely intriguing, kind of a RTS, real-time strategy type feel to it. Also, the graphics look incredible for what they're calling a AA game. Orthra Studios is a company that takes pride in making AA titles and trying to kind of revamp the industry of AA games, kind of filling the gap between indie developer games and the AAA titles. Really intrigued to see how this game plays and what other titles this studio comes out with. Just to throw out a few rapid-fire titles at the end that are coming out soon. Sorry, The Beginning on on May 4th. I don't know if I pronounced that right because it's Sayri. The Colonists on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Switch on May 4th as well. On May 6th, we'll be getting Skate City on PlayStation 5, the new Xbox consoles, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Also on all of those except for PC, we're going to get Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, Resident Evil Village, that huge title we all been talking about for so long now. May 7th is when that one's coming out. That's tomorrow. PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC for that one. And lastly, Hood, Outlaws and Legends, which I'm going to try to get a key mailer code for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. That'll be out May 10th. I hope you guys enjoyed your time with me here on Thumb of the Pulse. It's always so much fun letting you guys in on all the information that we get by putting our thumb on the pulse. Please feel free to comment down below on any of the stories you have to comment on. I love hearing your guys' thoughts. Also, if you could click that like button, click the subscribe button, and maybe even the bell too, so you can get notification as to when we post these stories. Thank you again so much, guys. I love your beautiful bean faces. You mean everything to me, and the support means the world to me. We will see you next week on Thumb on the Pulse. Bye-bye. And last but certainly, let's get that big fake smile on and get some energy going, eh? Still recording a boom shacky lacky. And whether have worked on games like Cyberpunk and other Blizzney sounds like a powerhouse to end all powerhouses. That's right. Just wanted to throw that out there. That's the news, baby, baby. That's the news. Whoop, whoop. That's the news, baby, baby. That's the news.